Hello everyone, and welcome back to CountryCast. Throughout country music's history, we have been blessed with some of the finest artists in the music business, but some of the artists that have gifted us with such talents tragically left this earth early on. Today we are going to honor and take a look back at those artists who tragically passed away too soon. First up is one of the most iconic figures in country music, Hank Williams Sr. Hank Sr. passed away at the young age of just 29 years old. Sr. passed away on January 1st in the year of 1953 in the back of his Cadillac on his way to Canton, Ohio, where he was scheduled to perform for a New Year's Day concert. Hank battled with spinal deformity, spinal bifida occulta, throughout his life, and during his battle with the pain caused from the deformity, Hank Williams used prescription pain pills. And just prior to Hank's passing, a doctor was called on behalf of Hank Sr. after his driver Charles Carr noticed that he was having effects from consuming alcohol and a sedative, chloral hydrate, while the two were at the Andrew Johnson Hotel in Knoxville, Tennessee. The doctor arrived where he administered a shot of B12 mixed with morphine, and shortly after, Williams was carried back to his car to continue his travels to Canton, Ohio. It was not until Hank and his driver, Charles Carr, reached Oak Hill, West Virginia, where Carr found Hank Williams dead in the back seat of his Cadillac. An autopsy was later performed where the cause of death was ruled that he had passed from hemorrhaging in his heart and insufficiency of his right ventricle. Even though Hank lived out a short career in country music, he made an everlasting impact on the genre and is revered as the father of the honky-tonk sound that still resonates throughout country music today. Hank's memory and music will forever live on. Next on our list is another man who touched the lives of many fans and fellow artists in the business. The one, the only, Keith Whitley. Keith Whitley's untimely passing came on May 9th in the year of 1989 at just 33 years old, after overdosing from alcohol. Just a year prior in 1988, according to the AP News, Whitley explained in an interview how he had stopped drinking in 1987, where he said, "It was a matter of life and death. If I hadn't stopped drinking, I don't think I'd be alive today. I did so many crazy things while drinking." According to the same article from the AP News, the autopsy ruled the cause of death overdose from alcohol. Cocaine and Valium were also found in Whitley's system, but the cause stemmed from drinking too much alcohol in a short period of time. Keith Whitley's alcohol blood content was documented at 0.477, almost 5 times the legal limit. At the time of Whitley's passing, his hit song No Stranger to the Rain was number 1 on the charts, and he was only 3 years into his marriage with fellow country singer Lorrie Morgan. To think that Whitley was coined to country at one point in his career is absolute insanity. His sound paved the way, and finally, in 2022, on October 16th, he was inducted into the Country Music Hall of Fame, where he so rightfully belongs. The next icon on our list is Miss Tammy Wynette. Tammy Wynette passed away at the age of 55 years old on April 6, 1999. Immediately following Tammy's passing, there was no autopsy conducted, and the cause of death was listed as a blood clot. However, 3 out of the 4 of Wynette's daughters grew suspicious of their mother's passing due to alleging curious circumstances surrounding her death. And according to a CNN report, they filed a $50 million wrongful death lawsuit against Tammy's husband at the time, George Ritchie, and her doctor, where it claimed there was a delay in notifying authorities of her passing, as well as overprescription of drugs, which, as you all may remember, Tammy Wynette used pain pills for her variety of health issues through her life, including chronic intestinal pain and undergoing multiple surgeries. That same CNN report that I mentioned also indicated that the daughters also obtained a court order to have their mother's body exhumed for an autopsy a year later. Wynette's body was exhumed and an autopsy was conducted by the medical examiner of Davidson County at the time. After the autopsy was conducted, no other cause of death could be determined other than the previous finding. and the medical examiner notated there were no blood clots in her lungs in the autopsy or under microscopic examination, but there was significant evidence of previous blood clots, which compromised her lungs and put pressure on her heart. He further stated that had the autopsy been completed sooner, he might have been able to get a better indication of drug levels in her blood, but it's virtually impossible to determine the exact drug levels at the time of Wynette's death or to what extent, if any, these drugs contributed to her heart failure and death. Ultimately, the daughters dropped Wynette's husband Richie from the suit and moved forward only with her doctor, where a private agreement was reached. Tammy Wynette had a voice of an angel, with hits of course like Stand By Your Man and Divorce. How can we not mention her time spent with George Jones? Tammy Wynette helped to break down barriers and was truly something special for country music. Moving into another female artist that left us too soon, Mindy McCready. Mindy McCready passed away at the age of 37 years old on February 17, 2013. Mindy McCready burst into the country music scene in the year of 1996 with her double platinum album, 10,000 Angels. But throughout her career, she lived a turbulent one with in and out of court, addiction to pain pills, and alcohol. And in 2010, she attempted a comeback into country music with her album, I'm Still Standing, which featured her hit single, I'm Still Here. However, 3 years later, on February 17, 2013, shortly after her two sons were removed from her care, according to a New York Times article at that time, McCready passed away on the front porch of her home from what authorities said to be an apparent self-inflicted gunshot wound. Mindy McCready was an instant sensation, and even though her life was surrounded by shadows, she still shined through to be a light in country music. Marty Robbins is next on our list. Marty Robbins passed away at the age of 57 years old on December 8, 1982. Marty Robbins was a man of many talents, country music singer, and hell, a NASCAR driver. Throughout his career, he had many hits, and one of my personal favorite albums of all time is his Gunfighter Ballads and Trail Songs album. Marty Robbins dealt with cardiovascular disease much of his life, and after his third heart attack on December 2, 1982, he underwent quadruple coronary bypass surgery at St. Thomas Hospital in Nashville, Tennessee, and just 6 days later, he passed away. Marty was really a true trailblazer in the business. As we mention health battles with Marty Robbins, the next few that we will mention battled their own health issues until their untimely passings. Eddie Rabbitt, the Cowboy Chris LeDoux, and Joey Feek. Eddie Rabbitt passed away at the age of 56 years old on May 7, 1998, after his battle with lung cancer. Eddie Rabbitt really infiltrated country music with his pop rock sound and many hits like Driving My Life Away, I Love a Rainy Night, Step by Step, and his beautiful ballad, You and I. A sound similar to Alabama, but one that was a breath of fresh air and like a style within the genre that we had not really seen before. Now, on to Chris LeDoux, the Hall of Fame rodeo champion and country music singer, passed away at the age of 56 years old on March 9, 2005, after his battle with liver cancer. Something that many may not know is that Chris LeDoux had a liver transplant, and prior to finding the compatible donor, Garth Brooks himself offered to donate part of his liver to LeDoux. However, ultimately, as I mentioned, even after receiving the transplant, LeDoux passed away from liver cancer. If there was ever a cowboy, a true cowboy, who played a significant role in country music, it was Chris LeDoux, combining country and rock in a way that was so raw and pure. Next, we have Joey Feek from Joey and Rory. Joey Feek passed away at the age of 40 years old on March 4, 2016, from her continuous battle against cervical cancer. Joey and Rory were outstanding at modernizing the traditional country and bluegrass sound, along with her soft but yet powerful vocal range carrying throughout their music. A married couple who truly captivated audiences. Another artist taken too soon passed away at the age of 47 years old on July 19, 1975, after suffering from a stroke. Hall of Fame inductee and arguably one of the best voices to dawn on country music, Lefty Frizzell. Lefty inspired many artists that followed, one in particular being my personal favorite vocalist of all time, George Jones. However, throughout his later years, Lefty picked up alcohol until his untimely passing. And as we speak of untimely, the next artist passed away unexpectedly: Conway Twitty, Joe Diffie, and Daryl Singletary. Conway Twitty revolutionized country music, and his pairing with Loretta Lynn were some of the best moments in time of the genre. Conway Twitty passed away at the age of 59 years old on June 5, 1993, after suffering from a ruptured blood vessel in his stomach, according to authorities who spoke to the New York Times. Conway Twitty collapsed on his tour bus on that night after performing in Branson, Missouri, and passed as a result of the ruptured blood vessel. Conway Twitty had an astronomical amount of hits, and no doubt that streak would have continued. His legacy is forever standing. Joe Diffie was another talent who played a big part in the 90s country era. Joe Diffie passed away at the age of 61 years old on March 29, 2020. According to Rolling Stone, Diffie passed away due to complications from COVID-19. Joe Diffie was one of the artists from the 90s that made that era as special as it was. Daryl Singletary is another unexpected passing at the age of just 46 years old on February 12, 2018, at his home in Lebanon, Tennessee. His cause of death was not initially released. However, according to Taste of Country sources, they relayed that a blood clot led to his passing. And lastly, we honor the artist who passed untimely as a result of a crash: Dottie West, John Denver, Troy Gentry, Patsy Cline. Dottie West passed away tragically at the age of just 58 years old on September 4, 1991, after sustaining injuries from a car crash. Dottie crashed while en route to the Grand Ole Opry, and on that night, West was initially driving a vehicle that Kenny Rogers had let her use. However, that vehicle had stalled and no longer worked, so Dottie decided to call her neighbor. Dottie got into the neighbor's vehicle, and the two continued to the Opry. However, in their travels, her neighbor lost control of the vehicle, crashing into a divider. West died several days later after a third operation and receiving 30 units of blood. Her injuries were a ruptured spleen and a lacerated liver. Troy Gentry, one half of Montgomery Gentry, passed at the age of 50 years old on September 8, 2017, after being involved in a helicopter crash. According to a 2-page report at the time, reported on by the Tennessean, the pilot had told the airport that he was unable to control the engine RPM with throttle inputs, which ultimately created an uncontrolled descent. Troy and Eddie will forever be loved for their music. Montgomery Gentry was one of the best duos to ever do it. John Denver. John Denver also passed away in an airplane crash at just 53 years old on October 12, 1997. John Denver crashed while piloting his own plane. John Denver not only played a significant role in country music, but music as an entirety. Take Me Home, Country Roads is one of the greatest songs of all time, in my opinion, and you can't go to any bar or anywhere where you want to do karaoke or any open mic where the song is not being played. And for our final artist, arguably the best female vocalist to ever do it in country music, Miss Patsy Cline. Patsy Cline tragically passed away at the young age of 30 years old alongside Lloyd Estelle Cowboy Copus and Harold Franklin Hackshaw Hawkins on March 5, 1963, after their plane had crashed. Patsy's plane, flown by her manager Randy Hughes, crashed after flying in inclement heavy weather. Patsy Cline was on her way back to Nashville, Tennessee after playing a benefit concert out in Kansas City. And if there was ever a voice that transcended this genre, Patsy Cline's name should always be mentioned. Guys, thank you for tuning in today. That will be all here on CountryCast. We wanted to honor those who have left us too soon in the genre. They have had such an impact on this music, and it's still being part of the music today. And these folks really, really were such a huge part of country music. Again, thank you all for tuning in. That will be all for today's video.